when you first look at these verses, you might not see the connection. But I believe that these two verses are a deliberate parallelism, both comparing and contrasting wine and the king or government, alcohol and government. There's a famous saying, I can't remember if it was Thomas Jefferson or George Washington, one of the founding fathers said that government is like fire, that it is I don't remember the exact quote, but it's essentially, it's a great servant and a fearful master. I'm sure it was more eloquent in the original. But I think that that's very similar to what is being said in these two verses. Show you what I mean. Here's how I believe that this parallelism works out. A scoffer is wine. Notice that the word order here is a little different than what I read in the English Standard Version. And what I did is I went back to the Hebrew and rearranged the words in the original word order from the Hebrew. So a scoffer is wine is paired with roaring of a lion. A brawler is a liquor paired with terror of a king. Whoever goes astray connects with whoever crosses him, and doesn't get wisdom connects with forfeits his life. Now let me show you the text and show you how I came up with that word order, and zoom in here on this. Okay, so here's the King James with the Strong's index numbers listed next to it. Okay, so King James with the Strong's numbers. If you're not aware of this, or if you don't remember from the chiasm course, Strong's index numbers are essentially an index of every Hebrew and Greek word that was used in the manuscripts that were used to translate the King James Bible. They're almost identical to the same manuscripts that are used to translate the English Standard and the NIV and all these other translations. There are some minor differences, but they're essentially the same. And at least in eSword, if you hover over that index number, you get the Strong's Concordance dictionary, or the Strong's Concordance definition. It's not always the best definition, but you can click on it and get to the Brown Driver Briggs, which is much better for Hebrew, or the Thayer's Greek dictionary for the New Testament. So anyways, wine is H3196, and you can see how I copied these numbers over here. So let me go to the Hebrew Old Testament, and you don't necessarily even need to know Hebrew to be able to take advantage of this feature in eSword, because it puts that Strong's number right next to each Hebrew word, so you can see where it falls in the verse. And this is great for validating a chiasm or a parallelism. And I mentioned the chiasm course earlier. If you have not done the chiasm course, that's available in Common Sense Bible Study. If you go to the spaces in the main menu, you can see the chiasm course there. If you already have access to it, you'll see it listed right there underneath spaces. If you don't, just go to the spaces, like just click on spaces, and that will show you. I think there might be a more link or something. And you can see all the available spaces. That is a premium space. So if you don't have access to it now, sign up for the premium membership, and you'll have access to the chiasm course and a Sabbath to Yahweh, and some upcoming courses that I'm working on about, how we got the Bible. Anyways, back to Proverbs 21 and 2. So looking at those Hebrew words, you can see how the first word in the Hebrew, remember Hebrew goes from right to left instead of left to right. The first word is H3887, which is actually not the first word in the King James. It's actually the second word. So we'll take that word, mocker, and then 3196 is wine, and 1993 is raging. Let me fix that spacing. 7941, or rather, I'm looking at the Hebrew, sorry. 7941, yeah, is strong drink, or raging strong drink. And in the Hebrew, over here, this is where I'm at now. In the Hebrew, it's 3605. At the end of that line is the next word, and that is whosoever. And 7686. In King James, that's translated as deceived. But if you look at the Brown Driver Briggs, to go astray, to err, to meander, to lead astray. So it can mean deceived, or it can mean just to go astray. And I think astray is better, and you'll see why. Back to the Hebrew, 3808 is not, or is not. And 2449 is wise. So that's how I got this word order. You pull that up. This is the Hebrew word order. Mocker, whine, raging, strong drink, whosoever stray is not wise. So you can see kind of where I got this word order over here. I'm not going to go through verse 2 because that's kind of tedious. But if you look at verse 1, a scoffer is whine. Kind of sounds like Yoda, but essentially means that whine is a scoffer. This is something that whine is saying. Scoffing is mocking or making fun of something. So whine scoffs, lions roar. Liquor is a brawler. That's something that it does or does to you. It makes you fight, or it fights you. Terror of a king, and this is something that a king does to you. It inspires terror. Both of these are some like an emotional reaction. Liquor is a brawler, can also be translated as liquor or strong drink, is a rager or causes rage. And then whoever goes astray, whoever crosses him, we can look at the definitions for that real quick. In verse 2 says, whoever provokes him to anger, but that's all just one word in Hebrew, and it's abar, which means to pass over, to alienate, to pass away, to be crossed. So what I think it's talking about there is, it is talking about making him angry, but literally it's about crossing him the wrong way. So whoever goes astray and whoever crosses him, both the same kind of idea. It's a person who is going the wrong direction. And in verse 1, doesn't get wisdom. And in verse 2, forfeits his life. In both cases, it's something that you lose. You could have gotten, but you lost, or that you could have had, but you lost. And that's why I think that these two verses are a deliberate parallelism. They're not just placed here randomly, but they are structured this way so that we will make a connection between the two verses. And you can think the same thing about fire. Fire will harm you if you use it incorrectly. Alcohol will harm you if you use it incorrectly. Government will harm you if you use it incorrectly. All three of these are the same basic principle. And all things are good if they are used in their proper context. And Paul even talks about this, that, he's convinced that there's nothing unclean in itself. And what he means is not ritually unclean, use in the temple or at the altar because God says otherwise. What he means is that everything has a purpose. Everything is fit for the use for which God created it. And Proverbs elsewhere talks about some of the proper uses of alcohol. And Yeshua created alcohol at the wedding in Cana. This is something that God created for a purpose. And it can be used socially, it can be used medicinally, but what it should never be used as is something to make you feel like you don't have to fix your problems, something to escape from your problems. Because that's when you're going to go astray. It's not the alcohol itself, it's the misuse of the alcohol that is the problem. And I think that everything that exists on a spectrum of hazard. Everything is dangerous in its way. Cars are great things, but if you misuse it, you're going to get hurt, you're going to hurt somebody else. Fire is a great thing, but if you play with fire, if you light the wrong things on fire, you're going to get hurt and you're going to destroy things. If you approach a king in the wrong way, or a judge or a mayor or any person with power and authority over you, if you approach them in the wrong way so that you offend them, this could hurt you. It could destroy your life. It could cost you whatever it is that you're trying to get from the government. It doesn't really matter if it's fair or not. It's just the way the world works. in drinking in the wrong time or the wrong place with the wrong people and the wrong volume.
Yeah.
All of those things contribute to whether it's going to be a problem or not. Sugar or even meat or vegetables, even if you eat too much at the wrong time and the wrong balance, you're going to cause problems for yourself. And you have to pay attention to how powerful one of these things is. Alcohol is not nearly as dangerous as a king. Not that it won't ruin your life, but it's not going to cut your head off. It's not going to put you in front of a firing squad, at least not right away. It could lead you to make decisions that put you there. For example, if you abuse alcohol, you may end up in trouble with the government. But you have to weigh whatever it is you're talking about, whether it's sugar or coffee or alcohol or government. You have to weigh the potential consequences of misusing it and how quick are those consequences. And sometimes the consequences, the time lag between the cause and effect can be deceiving. For example, if I do something today that's going to get me in trouble with the government, but they don't find out for 10 years down the road, it could destroy my life then, and I might think that I've gotten away with it. And the same thing happens with alcohol or drugs or anything else. You can do a little today, and that's maybe not a problem, but it can kind of creep up on you. And you have to know yourself. You have to know your circumstances. How much can you handle? And really, it takes time and wisdom to figure that kind of thing out with everything. With sin, there's no good level of sin. There's no like this much is okay, and this, but I won't go past this. There's no point like that with sin. All sin is bad.
Right.
Now, of course, some sins are definitely worse than others because of how it impacts you or the people around you. Can't remember exactly where I was going with that, but alcohol, on the other hand, is you have to know yourself, and you have to know what its effects are. There is an appropriate time and place to drink alcohol. I mean, I know I'll probably get myself into trouble with some people saying that, but it's just the fact. There's no commandment in Scripture against drinking. But it really comes down to you have to know the substance and you have to know yourself.
Yeah.
And there's no hard and fast line saying this much is okay and this much is not. That's why you have to know yourself and what its effects are on you. If you're the kind of person who is easily addicted to substances, if you are easily affected, if you make bad decisions when you drink, then maybe you shouldn't drink at all. Once you start down the path of softening your ability to make sound decisions, how will you even know when you reach that point? It's good to have people around you who are willing and able to point it out, and you have to be able to listen to them too.